One of the biggest issues that many fans have with Fire and Blood simply comes down to its format, being a fictional in-world history book with lots of vagueness and ambiguity, with many conflicting events and sources that are very biased to one side or another. But for me, that element is part of its very charm, and I enjoy the fact that every reader will have a different interpretation of events to some extent. I've read Fire and Blood maybe a dozen times by this point, and each time I do, I walk away with new questions that open up a realm of possibilities. The first time I read The Battle of Rook's Rest, to me it seemed a very straightforward series of events. But after recently skimming some sections of the book, or researching a video, something occurred to me. Maybe there is more to the Battle of Rook's Rest than meets the eye when you look at it in the context of the events that happened directly after and before it. Then, when I rewatched House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 9, The Green Council, it kinda hit me. With Aemond's clear lust for power in the TV show, is there maybe a possibility that in the books, Aemond intentionally engineered the removal of Aegon so he could either become king, or as it indeed played out, Prince Regent? From the onset, I think it's fair to point out that there seems to be nothing directly in Fire and Blood to indicate that Aemond had any kind of lust for power, or would intentionally harm Aegon in any way. In fact, if anything, he comes across as more loyal to his brother than anything else, at least up until and during Rook's Rest. Even when Aemond crossed certain lines, such as his infamous Strong Boys speech and his killing of Lucerys, Aegon seemed to support and back his brother regardless, even when the whole of the Green Council, in the case of the death of Lucerys, were shocked and angered by the actions of Aemond. Or, at least, that's how the accounts in Fire and Blood imply. So while it can be hard to discern the true nature of Aemond and Aegon's relationship from the sources we have access to, there is nothing that would directly indicate Aemond had his own agenda when it came to the idea of him seeking power, with, if anything, Aegon supporting Aemond when all others did not. I think there can maybe be a case made that Aemond attempting to claim Vhagar as a child is in itself him seeking power. What is largest, oldest, most powerful of the Targaryen dragons? Of course, it gives him the tools to impose his will and do as he sees fit, which is certainly something we do see later on in the war, in particular his actions while at Harrenhal and his reign of terror over the Riverlands. Dragons are at the core of Targaryen power, therefore Vhagar is at the core of Aemond's power. There are some questionable moments after Rook's Rest and Aegon's injuries that do raise some eyebrows that can support this idea somewhat, namely the fallout between Aemond and Criston Cole after they retake Harrenhal, that ultimately left Aemond and Vhagar staying at Harrenhal, with Cole taking the best part of the Green forces south towards Daeron Targaryen and the Hightower army, that is, until they are caught by the Riverland forces and the Winter Wolves at the Butcher's Ball. We know that Cole and Aemond disagreed on the course of action they should take after the fall of King's Landing and the fish feed. Some fans believe the separation of the forces and the events that followed seem a huge leap from Aemond and Cole disagreeing about strategy, and that there may have been a lot more to it, with there perhaps being a situation where the power Aemond now holds has starting to make his decision making more questionable. While I personally don't wholly agree with that idea, I do believe there might have been a lot more tension between Prince Regent Aemond and the Hand Cole than the history as told by Fire and Blood tells us, for such a huge divide to occur so quickly. At the end of the day, these are men who by rights were never expected to really hold any form of meaningful power, who in a matter of weeks became the two most powerful and influential men in Westeros. Such a rapid change in circumstances and position can change people and relationships. When Aegon is so badly injured after Rook's Rest, Aemond is made Prince Regent, which kind of de facto makes him king, especially when you consider at this point Aegon may very well still end up dying of his injuries. With his then heir, Maelor, just a baby, it creates a situation wherein if Aegon dies, it puts Aemond at the centre of power in Westeros for possibly the next 13 years, until Maelor came of age. No regency had been that long before, and who knows what a Prince Regent Aemond could have done in that timescale. The likes of Otto Hightower had already been cut out in terms of influence and power, having been replaced by Criston Cole as Hand, with Alicent also having very little meaningful power by this time. In a situation where the Greens win the Civil War, with Maelor as king, it would create a possible outcome where Aemond is de facto king for the foreseeable future. Now, there's nothing in Fire and Blood that actively suggests that Aemond even really sought out this kind of position or power, but as we have seen with many regents over the history of Westeros, power does change people and foster ambition. Very few men who are put in power as a result of necessity are thrilled to have that power stripped away again. So I could perhaps see a scenario wherein, now that Aemond has power, he wouldn't want to give it up, with this maybe being the wedge that forms between Aemond and Cole. Some have also made an argument that Alys River may also bear some influence in this fostering for a need for power within Aemond. However, the only basis I've really seen cited for this argument is her claim that her and Aemond's supposed infant son is the rightful king, and her declaring him king when the Regency Council sent to take back Harrenhal from her control after the Dance of the Dragons had ended. So how does all of this fit into Rook's Rest? Well, for many fans, this is the genesis of the concept of Aemond trying to kill Aegon to become king, with it coming from the ambiguity of the aftermath of Rook's Rest. In this sense, we don't really have a direct source as to what happened on the ground between both Aegon and Aemond. All we know for certainty is that Rhaenys fell for Criston Cole's trap, which then instigates a dragon battle between Sunfire, Vhagar, and Meleys, with Meleys and Rhaenys ending up dead, Sunfire badly injured, and Aegon with awful burns and broken bones from the impact. The battle is described as follows: that Prince Aemond and King Aegon appeared in the sky atop their own dragons, Sunfire and Vhagar, and attacked Rhaenys and Meleys. The three dragons then fought 1,000 feet above the battlefield, with Meleys closing her jaws around Sunfire's neck. Vhagar then fell upon them both, causing all three dragons to crash to the ground. Although Aemond and Vhagar rose unscathed, Meleys was broken and ripped to pieces from the fall, and Sunfire had one wing torn from his body, with Aegon suffering severe burns and broken bones, with the blackened body of Rhaenys found beside the carcass of her dragon. Now, some fans have argued that Aemond's actions at Rook's Rest were very rash and careless, especially because Vhagar effectively took out both Sunfire and Meleys. Thus, he could have intentionally allowed the fight to play out the way it did, with the intention of Aegon being injured or killed. It was a 2 versus 1 fight after all. Aemond did have Vhagar, so technically the balance of power should have been in their favour, especially when you consider it was an ambush Rhaenys was not expecting. Until Aemond and Vhagar's intervention, the battle seemed to be going in Rhaenys and Meleys' favour. It's not until Aemond and Vhagar get involved it's all but over for everybody involved. However, much like a lot of fan speculation, there is still really no basis for this in terms of Aemond's true intentions during the battle. Could he have sat back at the start? Maybe. Could he have intentionally targeted Aegon and Rhaenys during the fight? It's possible. But in reality, dragons are not exactly precision weapons, with it being just as likely Aegon got caught in the crossfire when Aemond attacked than Aemond intentionally trying to harm Aegon. The truth is, we can never truly know what happened in the skies above Rook's Rest. We can only speculate based on the outcome. It seems from reading many fan discussions online that people are using the fact that Aemond became Prince Regent as a pretense for him apparently trying to kill Aegon to gain himself power retroactively. So in terms of the book, while it's certainly possible that Aemond was power hungry and went out of his way to try and kill Aegon at Rook's Rest, with there being enough wiggle room and vagueness within the sources, but there isn't really a smoking gun. It's just as likely and more probable the fight played out as the sources state. But that's the beauty of Fire and Blood at the end of the day. While there are sources, it's very possible, given the very nature of the book, to question them. Now, the reason this theory has become so popular in the last few years really comes down to House of the Dragon, and fans projecting the character of Aemond from the show onto the character from Fire and Blood. In reality, they're quite distinctly different in many ways, albeit do bearing some similarity, as we see during Season 1, Episode 9, when Criston Cole and Aemond search the streets of King's Landing for the missing drunken Aegon so they can crown him. Aemond really shows his true desire for power, believing that he should be king, with Aegon not suited for it. To some extent, Aegon even believes this to be true himself. This then gets taken a step further, thanks to the footage of Rook's Rest from the Season 2 trailers, in context with some leaked set photos, with some fans believing there is a shot of Aemond about to mercy kill a burned Aegon, before being stopped by Kristen Cole. Given the context of the character in the show, there is a lot of speculation, especially in my own comment section, that in the show, Aemond may go as far as to trying to or letting Aegon intentionally get hurt to allow him to take power himself. This theory and speculation really does seem to be melding the context of events to come from the book with the character of Aemond from House of the Dragon. I'm not sure if they really place much bearing on each other, but I do understand why this idea is appealing. I personally just cannot see it. There is certainly not enough evidence in the book, and in terms of the TV show, I don't really think the writers really want to change the context of the Dance of the Dragon's first proper dragon battle in this way, into some act of betrayal from Aemond. The part I can maybe see coming true is this idea that Aemond would try and mercy kill Aegon, and perhaps getting carried away in the moment, and becoming more power-driven when he does in fact become Prince Regent. What do you think of this idea? Do you see Aemond intentionally trying to kill Aegon in the book? And what about the show? Let me know in the comments.